I never thought a quick trip to the convenience store would turn into a nightmare. But when a middle-aged woman accused me of recording her, things quickly spiraled out of control. She ripped off my prosthetic eye in a desperate attempt to prove her point. Here's how it all went down. I was just trying to grab a quick snack at the convenience store before heading back to work. As I entered the store, the cool air conditioning was a welcome relief from the hot summer sun outside. I made my way to the snack aisle, browsing the selection of chips and candy bars. That's when I heard her. "Hey you, stop recording me!" I turned around to see a middle-aged woman with a short haircut, her eyes fixed on me. I was taken aback, unsure of what she was talking about. I didn't even have my phone out. "I'm not recording you," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I'm just grabbing a snack." But she wouldn't let it go. She kept accusing me of recording her and demanded to see my phone. I tried to leave the store, but she blocked the exit, getting more and more aggressive by the second. I could feel my blood pressure rising, but I didn't want to make a scene. I'm not usually one for confrontation, but this Karen was pushing all of my buttons. I just wanted to get out of there and return to my normal day. Little did I know things were about to take a turn for the worse. Trying to avoid confrontation, I tried to push past Karen to leave the store, but she wouldn't budge. "I need to see your phone," she demanded, her voice rising. "I know you're recording me." "I'm not recording you," I repeated, trying to stay calm. "Please let me leave." But Karen wasn't having any of it. She started yelling at me, telling me that I was violating her privacy and that she was going to call the police. I could feel my anger building, but I tried to keep my cool. "Look, I don't know what you're talking about," I said. "I'm just trying to get a snack and go back to work. Can you please move out of the way?" Karen didn't move. Instead, she got even closer to me, her face inches from mine. "I know you're lying," she spat. "I can see the camera on your phone." I pulled out my phone and showed her that the camera was not on. "See? I'm not recording you," I said. But Karen wasn't satisfied. She started accusing me of being sneaky and trying to hide the camera. "I'm going to call the police and have them check your phone," she threatened. I tried to back away, but Karen followed me. "You're not leaving until I see your phone," she said. I was getting more and more frustrated by the second. "I don't have to show you anything," I said, my voice getting louder. "Just let me leave." But Karen wasn't going to let me go that easily. She started pushing me, trying to force me to hand over my phone. "Give me your phone now," she yelled. I could feel my blood boiling. "Leave me alone," I shouted, trying to push her away. At that moment, the store manager walked over. "Is everything okay here?" she asked, looking at Karen and me. Karen immediately switched gears, acting like nothing had happened. "Oh, everything's fine," she said sweetly. "I was just asking this young man a question." The manager didn't look convinced, but she didn't press the issue. "Okay, well, let me know if you need anything," she said before walking away. I was seething. Karen had just physically assaulted me and then acted like nothing had happened. I knew I needed to get out of there before things got any worse, so instead, I tried to turn away and pretend that this encounter never happened. But Karen wasn't done yet. As I turned to leave, she grabbed my prosthetic eye and pulled it out of its socket. I was in a lot of pain. Karen had just ripped off my prosthetic eye in an attempt to find the camera. I stumbled backwards, trying to keep my balance. Blood was streaming down my face, and I could feel the stares of the other customers and store employees on me. Despite the pain, I tried to reason with Karen. "Why did you do that?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Why did you have to take it that far?" Karen just sneered. "You shouldn't have been recording me," she said. "You deserved it." I could feel the anger building inside of me. "I wasn't recording you," I shouted. "I was just trying to get a snack and go back to work. Why can't you just leave me alone?" But Karen wasn't going to back down. "You're a liar," she said. "I know what I saw." I could feel the weight of the situation bearing down on me. I knew I had to do something to prove my innocence, but I wasn't sure what. I looked around, hoping to find something that would help me, and then I saw it, the security camera. "Look," I said, pointing to the camera. "You can see for yourself. I wasn't recording you." Karen still looked skeptical, but the other customers and store employees were starting to side with me. "Yeah," one of them said. "He wasn't doing anything wrong. You're the one who caused all this trouble." Karen looked around, realizing that she was outnumbered. "Fine," she said, throwing my phone back at me. "But you're lucky I don't press charges against you." I was still in shock as Karen stormed out of the store. The other customers and store employees came over to check on me, making sure I was okay. Despite the pain and trauma of the experience, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I had stood up for myself and proven my innocence. Still, I wasn't going to let this pass. I'm currently working with the store manager and viewing the security footage to see if there was anything identifiable about this woman from the footage. I'm not going to let her get away with this that easy. Wow, that Karen really crossed the line. It's unbelievable how some people can just snap like that. Hope that this person finds justice. To be harassed in public is one thing, but getting your prosthetic eye ripped out? Yikes. Back in 2019, before the pandemic, I had been working at a dispensary for 5 years. This dispensary closed down due to financial issues, and I had to find another job. So, I started working at a recycling plant doing cleanup, which paid me around $300 weekly. One day, unexpectedly, the owner of the closed dispensary called me and told me he wanted to come over. I didn't know that he was homeless and needed a place to crash. He announced that he was going to sleep on my couch until he found a place to live. At first, I thought it was a good idea to let him in. 2 days after welfare day, he showed up at my apartment. After getting settled in, he started making demands. He had a bag of weed, which he would only let me smoke under his terms. Then, he asked me for money since he was short on cash, and it was just a couple of days after welfare day. I told him I had paid another weed dealer the money I owed him. He then decided to confront this weed dealer who happened to be a wannabe biker and drove a moped. This biker came back to my apartment and gave me trouble. Now, I had to rely on this drug addict who moved into my apartment for weed. He told me he owed money to the person he got the weed from, and that I somehow owed that person $100 for the weed he brought. I told him that he couldn't have it, and he shouldn't have brought it in the first place. Secondly, I didn't know this person, so how could I owe him money? He guilt-tripped me and made me feel responsible for his pain, so I gave him the money. He started borrowing money from me every day and never paid me back. He even accused me of being selfish for buying cigarettes and alcohol with the money I worked hard for. One day, he confronted me and told me I had a job, a disability pension, and was supported by a non-profit for food and clothes. And yet I was selfishly spending all that money on myself. He thought he had some claim to my money and would get upset with me if I didn't give him more. I felt guilty and promised to give him $100 the next payday. He started asking his other friends for money and using my bank to cash e-transfers. He yelled at me when I asked for my money back, saying that he let me smoke his weed. After a few days, he completely drained me of all my money and asked me to make a sign, stand on a street corner, and beg for money, then give him the proceeds. At first, I refused, but he accused me of not caring about him and went running to the bathroom crying. He successfully guilt-tripped me and reminded me that he was in pain. I went to the street corner and begged for change, and he shook me down, making sure I didn't keep any money for myself because that would be selfish. This went on for 2 weeks, and one day, he locked me out of my own house and said I wasn't allowed back until I brought money for him. He did several things that put my housing at risk, and he told me I had to risk my housing because it would be worth it if it meant he could stay there a few days, and then we would both be homeless together. After 2 weeks of grinding me for $40 a day by reminding me he was in pain, my building manager evicted him. He told him he did nothing wrong and gave me a look that I did something wrong for not defending him or begging for him to stay. He then called me the next day, told me he was pissed off at me for letting him be evicted, and demanded yet another $100, or he would withdraw his friendship. I told him that was fine, and I never saw him again. There was evidence to suggest he was doing other drugs besides heroin. There were crack pipes and bath salts in the bathroom. He told me he should be my #1 priority the whole time he was there. I had other expenditures, but he told me I didn't have to pay my personal trainer, or I should skip a credit card payment because again he was in pain. Looking back, I should have gotten rid of him earlier. But from now on, I won't let someone take advantage of me like that ever again. I have learned to say no and set my boundaries. I won't let people stay at my house anymore because I refuse to be taken advantage of again like that. I have realized that it's okay to prioritize myself and my well-being over someone else's pain. Lastly, I learned not to trust a junkie. That's crazy. It's never easy to say no to someone, especially when they're in pain or need help. However, it's important to remember that our own well-being should always come first. Learning to set boundaries is a valuable lesson that can prevent us from being taken advantage of in the future. I guess maybe my brother only liked camping if it meant messing with me in some way. 2 weeks after I pranked my brother with laxative-spiked beer in a growler, I went camping again. This time, in a completely different place, deeper in the hills and forest. I went alone this time too. I know a lot of you are probably thinking that I go camping too much. Well, that's because my brother ruined several trips till I got back at him, and I wanted one final trip to make up for it this year. And admittedly, having a camper trailer makes a nice home away from home. I don't know if you've ever had such a pleasant morning where you wake up to just the nicest fresh air and feeling good and rested for a change. But that's how it was for me on this trip. I was worried that my brother might try to follow me again, but he didn't. He didn't even try to go camping at all while I was out there. And he knew in advance where I was going too, as we've both been there before. I went up to a reserved camping area that had a lot of open spots because since summer ended, people aren't camping as much. I parked my trailer in a good spot, met a few nice people, had some beers while sitting outside and watching movies on the portable DVD player, caught up on some light reading, enjoyed roasting marshmallows with some other people and making s'mores. It was a really simple and enjoyable time. I actually attracted some attention with the portable DVD player player because no one there had seen someone use one in a while. I mean, they're so handy. Why are people not still using them? You should be able to go to the electronics store right now and get ones that can play Blu-rays. But I ended up drawing in a young married couple who were camping next to me by watching a DVD of Ford vs Ferrari. Such a good movie. And it opened the door for me to hang out with a few other people there. A lot of us gathered around a fire pit. I had stuff for s'mores, and so did they. So it was just a grand old time of a s'more party. Though we did comedically bicker a bit over which chocolate is best for the s'mores. Hershey's all the way. It all went just how I like camping to be. No one to wake me up by knocking on my door. No one asking for beer handouts. No one trying to mess with me. Friendly neighbors who don't make a ton of noise. Making new friends. Etc. I haven't had that good of a camping experience since before COVID. And back then, I didn't have my camper either. So this experience was extra good for me. I ended up singing the praises of how good the camping trip was online after I got home. And my brother seemed rather perturbed by it because he had another passive-aggressive comment, which he later removed because our parents saw it too, and harped on him for trying to gaslight me again. If I recall, the comment was something like, "Must be nice to enjoy camping alone and having everything you want." It was pretty obvious he was trying to bait me, but it didn't work well. So what does my brother do? He decides he's gonna go camping the same way I did, in the exact same place too, and on the following weekend. Suffice to say, it did not go well for him. Firstly, he went online and found a used portable DVD player like I did for cheap, but he whined that he paid more for it than I did mine. And I don't think he was a fan of the screen size, but it was all he could find on short notice. Then while camping, he complained online about the people there not being so friendly to him. Ergo, he possibly annoyed them until they told him to go away. If you're meeting my brother for the first time in such a place, he can come off as either a whiny jerk, a mooching hothead, or a general douche, and he talks people's ears off about things he makes up and exaggerates. If you try to walk away, he'll follow you. He complained they laughed at his mini-ram, and he also said he felt like he was being judged by them for having cheap beer. That kind of sounds like paranoia to me. He also complained that it wasn't very fun to watch DVDs on a player that only had a 9-inch screen. Even though he has a TV and gaming setup in his camper since he lives in it now, he didn't have a way to power it up without a generator or power outlet. Anyway, if all that wasn't bad enough, he complained of just being very bored in general. There was no one there he could get away with pestering, and I doubt anyone enjoyed his bragging about the mini-ram, and he probably had little else to do other than sitting around on his phone. He live-streamed a video of himself going hiking, and shortly after the video started recording, he tripped over a stick because he was paying too much attention to his phone and landed on his face. He was trying to show off and act like he was some sort of professional while doing a fake British accent. The fall gave him a black eye and a swollen left side of his face. He deleted the video off his social media before most people saw it. But some, including myself, still caught it. Then his last day was spent mostly indoors of his camper because it was raining heavily. That's why I wanted to get my camping urges over and done with before the fall rains really kicked off. Fall and winter are mostly just swampy rain here, and we get a lot of it, so flooding in some areas happens a lot. Pennywise would drown. My brother basically spent that last day watching DVDs on his portable player, playing on his phone and laptop, and not doing much else. He pretty much posted online about every little thing he was doing, because of how bored he was. Then said he was just going to go home and play video games. But when he tried to leave, the mini-ram wouldn't move. It started but wouldn't shift into drive. He panicked and called me. Over the phone we talked and came to the conclusion that most of the fluid had leaked out of his transmission after I had him check it. So I drove down in heavy rain to meet him over there at dusk with some new fluid and a bottle of Lucas transmission fix to help the seals and the shifting. That got the mini-ram going again, and my brother begrudgingly reimbursed me for the gas I used to get there and for the fluids. He also later admitted the mini-ram is shifting better. He somehow went this whole time without bothering to check the transmission fluid. I'd like to say the look of defeat he had was priceless. But this time I couldn't even laugh at his misery. His ego already took a bad enough hit that he had to call me for help. I reminded him that his mini-ram was a vehicle on borrowed time, and it likely wasn't helping the transmission with all the extra weight he was towing around with his camper. For once, he didn't disagree with me. Normally, he's pretty jerkish around me in general, but on this day, we didn't fight or even disagree on anything. He's already invested enough in stupid redneck modifications on that van and truck without much return other than feeding his own ego. My brother's ex-girlfriend told me she wasted enough money on that van long before she gave it to him, and he cut it up into the mini-ram. Once the engine or transmission goes, maybe someone else would be interested in buying what's left of it. I ended up towing his camper home for him so he could go easy on the mini-ram's transmission. And just to make him feel a little better, I brought along my old set of walkie-talkies. And we had some fun talking back and forth with them. We both took a crack at trying to speak trucker, but admittedly we're both terrible at it. Which is ironic because both of our parents know CB lingo inside and out from the 70s and 80s. I got my brother's camper back to his home, and we were having an awkward goodbye when his douched housemates started making stupid jokes at us. And of course, my brother had to be himself and join in on it with them, until I whispered about how they might want to know how he fell on his face, and then he told them to shut up. That was pretty much the end of that. Wow, what a camping trip. Sounds like this guy's brother got what was coming to him after all the pranks. And I gotta say, a portable DVD player is a pretty underrated camping accessory. Glad he had a good time, and even happier that his brother's trip didn't go so well. I run and manage a small inn by myself, with a total of 10 rooms. There's a house next to the inn where I live, so I'm working 24/7 and I'm the only one here. The hotel is old, having been built in the 70s, and is currently under new ownership since February of this year, so only about 2 months now. I've been working and living here since January. The new owners have been renovating all the rooms slowly and started by turning off all the propane heaters to eventually switch to electric heat. Right now, there are brand new space heaters in all the rooms except rooms 7, 8, and 10. We've had to keep the old space heaters in those rooms because the new ones kept tripping the breaker. However, on full blast, they will still turn those rooms into ovens. There were plans to rewire everything sometime around last month, but just a week before they were about to have someone do that, the awning collapsed due to all the snow we received this year. Awning, overhang, carport, whatever you want to call it, came down and crushed my car. So we've had to suspend a lot of their projects so we could focus on getting that fixed. But insurance is a pain, so we're not even sure when we can start getting it cleaned up. We've had to make a temporary office in one of the rooms because the typical office was now inaccessible due to the fallen awning, but it hasn't been a problem so far. Except for me because I have to wait for a phone call to know anyone's arrived now and have to walk out there to make reservations and check people in. Unlike before when the office was attached to the house and I could check people in and make reservations a lot quicker and easier. Now our prices aren't cheap, but we also aren't super expensive. We've priced the rooms in the middle since we are a 3-star hotel. Also, keep in mind that it's the middle of the weekend, and the weekend has always had higher rates. To start, the main focus of our story will be my entitled guest. I don't know his name, and I don't care to know his name. Let's call him Kevin. Kevin and his family called sometime around 10:30 last night inquiring about some rooms for him and his family. It was his wife on the line, and she was asking about the prices that are listed through Expedia. Now, I absolutely despise Expedia. They give their members rates way below our typical room rate, and then we make hardly a dime off of them after all the fees we have to pay them. But if people book through Expedia and it comes to that price, it's not my problem. That's Expedia's deal. But I can't give Expedia prices as flat rates over the phone. We aren't Expedia. After telling them this, they then changed their tone to just ask for a senior discount. I would have no idea if they were lying or not just to receive the discount, but I'm not going to argue. I honestly give discounts all the time to people who ask nicely, like it's literally not a big deal. Anyway, 30 minutes later, they arrived and pulled into our tiny parking lot with a pickup and a massive trailer behind them. I'm terrible at estimating how big things are, but it was bigger than the truck itself. Looked about the size of a large horse hauler. But our parking lot is on the small side, barely even capable of fitting 10 cars in the lot, and this thing takes up half the available space. I suggested they park it on the side of the road next to the house where they would have a much easier time getting out, and they told me they were fine where they were at. People usually move their cars after check-in, so I didn't see a problem with them being there for the time being. During check-in, however, they asked to see the rooms first. That's also not a big deal, but the way he asked was kind of rude and out of the blue. I hadn't even checked him in or charged his card yet, and he asked, "Can I get the room key?" After I gave him a questioning look, he then clarified it was to see the room. He walked over to the king room he had booked, checked the firmness of the bed, and said, "Yep, this is good." I asked him if he wanted to see the other room he had reserved as well, and he said, "Nope, it doesn't matter. We're staying here tonight." So they instantly started unpacking all of their things to take into their rooms, and I had to remind them I still needed a signature because I hadn't charged them for the room yet. It took a few minutes before the wife came in, and I repeated to her the price of the rooms. This will be the second time I told them, and she said, "Yeah, that's fine." She then thoroughly inspected the receipt I gave her, and I'm honestly not even sure what she was looking for. I told her the price. They had gotten the senior discount on the rooms like they wanted, and they never made a fuss about the price. I had thought they had wanted a cheaper deal because of the prices Expedia listed us as, but they had booked our most expensive rooms and didn't even try to negotiate. Again, I give pretty good discounts to people who ask nicely or when they tell me they're on a budget, but those kinds of people also don't book the most expensive rooms. As they were leaving our temporary office, Kevin stated, "No one else is going to show up tonight, so I'm going to stay parked there. We'll be leaving pretty early." Now this was a problem. He was parked directly in the center of the parking lot, and I had to tell them I had people come in to book a room at all hours of the night, sometimes even up to 2 a.m. I suggested again that he park on the side of the road where there was more room for him, and he simply said he'd just move over, which he did, though he still took up a lot of space. It wasn't a busy night though, and there was now actually room for someone to come past him to come to the temporary office, so I just let it be. I asked if they needed anything else and told them that if they did need anything, to just call the hotel number. I'm here literally 24/7 and will do my best to help with what they need. Now fast forward to the next morning, and I'm woken promptly at 6 by a phone call. It is Kevin calling, and the first thing he says to me is something like, "This was the worst experience I've ever had at a hotel. I demand a refund." I don't remember his exact words because I was just woken up. I don't wake up usually until around at least 8 because of how messed up my sleep schedule has become. You know, with people showing up randomly at 2 a.m. for a room. So I ask him what the issue was, and he tells me there was absolutely no heat in the rooms, no hot water, and they couldn't get any sleep because the space heaters were rattling so loud. I ask him if I could come outside to take a look at the heaters, and he tells me that's fine. When he asked me the night before if the thermostat worked, I told him it did. However, I did not realize that the owners had fully turned off the propane heaters, so the only thing heating the room was the space heater. As I stated before, the space heaters work very well with warming up the rooms. They just stay at their lowest setting when they aren't occupied, so it's up to the guest to turn it up if they want more heat. Anyway, as I came to check on the heater, I walked in, and it definitely was not cold. Outside I was shivering, but not in the room. After checking it, that is when I realized the pilot light for the heater was out. I apologized for my mistake, but reiterated that the space heater was more than enough to warm up the room, and asked them if they had turned it up from the lowest setting. My question was blatantly disregarded as he said, "It doesn't matter if the space heater works or not." I had asked if the thermostat worked, and it clearly does not. That space heater rattled all night, keeping us from having a good night's sleep. He then restates that there is no hot water, and I tell him that he's in one of the furthest out rooms in the inn, and it takes a few minutes of the water running for it to reach them. It was an old hotel, so things aren't perfect. Kevin tells me, "That's no excuse. I've traveled the world and stayed in older hotels than this, and I have never had this problem." He asks for a refund, and I tell them I'm going to make a phone call to my boss first. I head inside, grab my phone, and they ask to speak with Kevin in my stead. I go back outside and pass off my phone to them, and I get the pleasure of re-listening to his complaints about his stay, telling my boss we were completely overcharging for our rooms, and we were scamming people. Kevin started threatening to leave bad reviews for weeks on end if he didn't get his refund. And let's be clear here, we are a small family-run business who just started using Expedia, so there are only like 2 reviews on there. If he really did start leaving a ton of bad reviews, our rating and resulting business would suffer. After some small back and forth, they agree to at least accept a full refund on one of the rooms they stayed in. I go out to the temporary office to get it started, and the wife comes by and watches me as I'm doing it. Our system wasn't working how I remembered it, so I had to call my aunt and wake her up to be reminded how to do it. But in the end, had to do it a different way, because the system had changed. I ended up having to refund the entire amount and then recharge their card, but for half the price. The wife asked for a receipt, and I told her I could do that, but I didn't think the refund would show up on it. Indeed, it didn't. It still showed the total to be $155 something, but I pointed out to her that $72.46 had been charged, and there was a balance due of $72.46, and that's where her refund was, and her card would only be charged the $72.46. I believe these were the prices. Don't quote me on that. She herself started getting snippy at me, not understanding why I didn't need to see her credit card to issue the refund. This is the first hotel I've ever worked in, so I don't know how other places do it. But here, the guest information and payment information are saved in the system for easier guest returns. That way, we don't have to re-enter all of their information again. So I didn't need to see her card again because her information was already in the system. Like, I don't even ask to see any IDs. We're really laid back here. Anyway, she still was confused about the receipt, so I just showed her directly on my computer how I processed the refund. Before she left, she then told me the Wi-Fi wasn't working. I told her it was working fine because my own phone was connected to the Wi-Fi. She told me, "Then you must have it written down wrong because our daughter is super tech savvy, and she couldn't get it to work." Which is nonsense. The password has never changed in the time I've been here, and it's worked perfectly fine for every other guest, other than a few old couples who I had to go out and enter the password for them myself. They are also the ones who've told me the number on the door to call doesn't work, despite me entering the number into my phone myself, and it working just fine. After they were gone, I went into each of the rooms they had stayed in, and sure enough, the space heaters were still on their lowest settings, and the water was heating up just fine. There was nothing wrong with the rooms from what I could tell, and it really seemed like he only found things to complain about, so he wouldn't have to pay full price for the rooms. If they had called me any time during the night to ask or clarify about the heaters, I would have been more than willing to go out there, find out that the propane heaters had been shut off, and shown them how to turn up their space heaters. Like I said before, I'm here 24/7 and am available 24/7. My car was crushed a month ago, so it's not like I can go anywhere. Honestly, this has been one of the least entitled people I've dealt with while working here so far, but it's the most recent. Most people don't have a problem with our rooms, and I've had people leave tips and notes thanking me for the nice room. The rooms are rustic, but they aren't bad. I clean them myself and constantly check for things like bed bugs and mice. Still, it was a strange experience. Can't believe some people can be so entitled and demanding. Props to the inn manager for handling it all with grace and professionalism. Keep up the great work and hope the renovations and repairs go smoothly.